cold and hot. My eyes roamed across the deck, searching. I spotted my victim about a dozen yards away, leaning against the railing. He was smoking a pipe, relaxed, quite unaware of what I had in store for him. Captain. My water-soaked boots squeaked with the kind of wrath possessed only by a girl who has just escaped drowning in the North Sea like a wet rat. He made the mistake of turning towards me with an ingratiating smile. I wasn't really in the mood for smiles. My hand shot out, grabbing him by the collar. Captain, what is this I hear about you having given the order to stop searching and turn back? Have you found him yet? I knew he hadn't before the words were out of my mouth. That smile of his, as if he were dealing with a mentally incompetent damsel who needed to be treated with care so she wouldn't snap in half, told me all I needed to know. Miss Linton, reaching out, Captain Crockford patted my hand reassuringly, or at least in a manner he thought would be reassuring. We've already combed the ocean for Mr. What did you say his name was again? Ambrose, Richard Ambrose. We've already combed the ocean for Mr. Ambrose for 5 days in a row. That's how long he's been out here, Miss Linton, 5 days. Even if he managed to crawl onto a piece of wreckage somehow, a human being cannot survive longer than 3 days without fresh water. And if he was just afloat in the sea, well, the cold water would have killed him in no more than 2 hours. No, he must be alive, he must be. Even if, by some miracle, he still is, it is not my responsibility to look for him. For the first time, a note of annoyance crept into the captain's voice. I barely kept myself from trying to strangle him. True, the water guard, one, has always helped victims of shipwreck, but our main duty is and always shall be guarding Her Majesty's coast against smugglers, not wasting our time on fruitless searches. I don't care about that, Captain. Keep searching. I repeat, there's nothing alive to search for, Miss Linton. What is he again to you? In spite of the intense cold, I felt my face flush. Blast, blast, blast. Why do you have to blush? Nothing happened between him and you. Nothing whatsoever. Well, except for that moment, just before the ship went down. No, that was nothing. My cousin, I lied. Your cousin, Miss Linton, will not be found alive. I'm afraid he is fish food by now. No, never. Most regrettable, of course, most regrettable. The captain puffed out a smoke ring, but you'll have to face the inevitable sooner or later. If you'd like to sit down and have a shot of brandy, I could. I told him where he could stick his brandy. Miss Linton, that's hardly appropriate. Oh, to hell with what's appropriate. Grabbing the man's collar more tightly, I shook him, trying to make him see with the sheer force of my stare. Have you got any idea whom you're about to doom to a wet grave, Captain? Any idea how important he is? The captain puffed out another smoke ring. Yes, of course. I'm sure he was very important to you and you feel his loss greatly, miss. I don't mean important to me, personally, I cut him off. Although he is, oh, how very much he is. I mean important. Think very carefully, Captain. Have you never heard the name Richard Ambrose before? The captain opened his mouth to blow yet another smoke ring, then he choked, and coughed out the smoke through his nostrils. Underneath the tan of his weathered skin, I could see the color slowly drain from his face. Why you can't mean the Richard Ambrose, the financial magnate. As if there were any others like him. I met the captain's gaze without flinching. That's the one. Captain Crockford's teeth clenched down so hard, they nearly bit his pipe in half. Well, I raised a questioning eyebrow. Are you going to keep searching? Asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk. Captain Crockford didn't just keep searching, he called in 3 more ships to help. I didn't see them at first, the white of their billowing sails almost invisible against the white cliffs of Dover. But when men on the other ships started waving signal flags, coordinating search patterns, I realized we were not alone any longer. There are more of us now, and we're going to comb the whole breadth and width of the English Channel until we find him. Man overboard. The cry from the prow of the boat sent me whirling around. Man overboard ahead. I reached the brow just as the dinghy was lowered into the water. The men began to row, and I looked around wildly, trying to see where they were going. Where is he? Where is he? The ship's lieutenant, who was standing beside me, also gazing after the departing men, pointed to a spot not too far away from the ship. There, miss. I followed his outstretched arm with my eyes, and saw a man in a dark tailcoat floating in the water, floating facey down. Without warning, a feeling of nausea came over me. Well, look on the bright side. If you're going to vomit, the ship's railing is just a few feet ahead. Do it over the side and nobody will care. You might just throw yourself over the side while you're at it, too. I felt like laughing and crying and screaming my rage all at the same time. Calm down, it's just a man wearing a dark tailcoat. Lots of men wear dark tailcoats. It doesn't have to be him. No, it didn't have to be him. I kept telling myself that, over and over, but the question kept coming back, what if it is? The men out on the water pulled the motionless body into their little boat and returned to the ship with swift dips of the oars. I stood motionless, awaiting their return, awaiting my doom, or my salvation. And since when have you been so bloody melodramatic? The answer to that was simple. Since him, of course. A rope was tied around the dead man's torso, and he was pulled up the side of the ship until he slid over the railing and landed on the deck with a wet thwack. I didn't look. I didn't dare to. Miss, it wasn't the lieutenant's voice. Captain Crockford had appeared beside me, looking not half as relaxed and aloof as earlier. His face still was rather pale. Miss, I'm terribly sorry, but I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to identify the body. Somehow, I managed to swallow around the giant lump in my throat. Get a grip and look. You owe him that. You would be dead if not for him. All right, Captain, step aside, please. The captain did as I asked and offered me his arm for support, but I didn't take it. I was a wreck, but I would have to feel a lot worse than this to need a man's arm to stand upright. Lifting my chin, I forced my gaze towards the contorted figure on the planks of the deck. Thank the Lord. I breathed in a sigh of relief so deep I could hardly believe my lungs had the space for all that air. It's not him. Are you sure, miss? The captain asked, still sounding worried. I mean, with his face looking like that. I'm sure. Even with his face swollen and horribly bluish, I could instantly tell that the man on the deck was not Mr. Ambrose. In fact, it would hardly have been possible to find a man who looked less like Richard Ambrose than the pudgy individual with the sodden black moustache that lay there in front of me. Well, what does Mr. Ambrose look like? The captain asked. A choked sob escaped me. Why, are you expecting to fish so many men out of the sea that you'll have to pick and choose? Just tell me, Miss Linton. With a shrug, I gave in. I didn't have the strength to resist right now. Following right on the heels of the relief that the dead man wasn't Mr. Ambrose had come the horror of knowing that this was what he probably looked like now, blue, swollen, stiff and cold. Well, he's always been stiff and cold, so at least it won't change, will it? Another sob escaped me. Tell me, Miss Linton, the captain insisted. Oh, what the hell, if he thought it would help. He's tall, dark, and handsome, so bloody perfectly handsome. And, dark-haired, I mean. I coughed, hoping that nobody was noticing my ears reddening. A drowned man was lying right in front of me, for Pete's sake. How could I think of something like that at a time like this? Beard, Miss Linton. He hasn't got a beard, not even a moustache. The captain's eyebrows rose. No beard. I shook my head, none at all. But a jaw you could break rocks on, and eyes, dark and coloured like the sea. I shook myself. What bloody use was his eye colour going to be to them for fishing him out of the ocean? Focus, Lily, focus on what's important. No beard. He's not an old man, then, Miss Linton. I would have thought to have reached his position in life. No, I don't know how old he is exactly, but no more than 25, I'd guess. His face is as smooth as polished granite, and as hard and unmoving, most of the time. But his lips, they can be so very soft. Blast, I was supposed to give a description here. Clenching my hands, I bit back the tears that were threatening to spill over and concentrated on one thing, and one thing only, Richard Ambrose. His figure, the captain inquired, taking notes in a small notebook he had snatched out of his pocket. He's leanly built. But he has muscles, even though one doesn't see them at first glance. And you've felt every single one of them. His voice, just in case we hear him calling for help. Quite deep, but most of all curt and cold. My lips twitched, so curt and cold. If you hear him calling, he'll probably not be calling for help but ordering you to come. What wouldn't I give to hear him snapping at me again, making demands, ordering me around. Before, it had almost driven me crazy. Now that he wasn't here anymore, I missed the bloody tyrant. I missed his eyes, his voice, his overwhelming presence. I even missed his stinginess and gruff, biting remarks. But most of all, I missed the knowledge that he was safe and well. I missed him, all of him. Blast, that's all you need. After the way he treated you, you've gone and become fond of the bastard. Although, fond, might not be exactly the right word to describe the way I was feeling, I admitted to myself, my ears still burning. Miss Linton, the captain's voice pulled me from my reverie. Miss Linton, are you all right? You look a little unwell. It's just, seeing that poor, unfortunate soul, I lied, gesturing to the corpse on the floor, from which any remnant of a soul already had departed. Oh, of course, Miss Linton, how thoughtless of me. Men, wrap him up and carry him away, now. I'm sorry, Captain, it's just, I've never seen a dead man before. My goodness, you're good at lying today, aren't you? The captain made an impatient gesture. Lieutenant, fetch a glass of brandy for Miss Linton, and signal the other ships to keep looking. Aye, sir. When the brandy came, I didn't say no. On the contrary, I tossed the whole contents of the glass back in one large gulp. When I lowered the glass, the lieutenant was looking at me, wide-eyed, as were all other members of the crew in the vicinity. What's the matter? I asked. Never seen a lady take a sip of brandy before. Not quite like that, miss, no. The lieutenant bowed. If you'll excuse me, I have to get back to my other men, to oversee the search. And so we continued around the white cliffs of Dover and past beaches and bays. For hours and hours and hours we scoured the water and the coastline, now and again exchanging flag signals with another ship, but mostly just staring into the water, searching, always searching. The monotony was almost as bad as the bone-deep fear. And when the monotony was interrupted, that was even worse, because the only possible interruption was another corpse. No, that's not him, either. Shaking my head, I turned away from the dead form on the deck. Please, take him away. Of course, Miss Linton. Remove that thing at once, men. Aye, sir. And again, hours of staring into the blue-grey sea would follow. If only the sea weren't exactly the same color as his eyes. Maybe, just maybe that would have made it a little easier. That blasted man had to have eyes the same blasted color as the blasted ocean he was probably drowning in at this very moment. Captain, Miss Linton. The shout from behind me made me turn. It wasn't the usual shout of, man overboard, that heralded the finding of another corpse. It wasn't even one of the search party who had called. No, the ship's signaller, brightly colored flags in hand, motioned for the captain and me to join him. What is it, Watkins? The captain demanded, marching towards the man. I was only a few steps behind. Signals, Captain, from one of the other ships, and not the usual signals about search patterns, either. They're sending a message. Shielding his eyes against the sun, the captain stared off towards the ship to which the signaller pointed. I, too, followed the man's arm with my gaze, and saw nothing more than a few spots of color in the distance. What does that mean? I demanded. I don't know flag signals. The color in the distance changed. That's an M, the signaller shouted. An M. Messages are sent in color movement combinations. Every combination stands for a different letter in the alphabet. That's an A, and that's an N. M-A-N. Man, they're sending a signal about a man, or maybe a mantis. What kind of man? I demanded, telling my stupid inner voice to shut up. Is he all right? Where's the signal coming from? The signaller ignored me with the thoroughness of a man who does nothing but swing flags all day. Full of concentration, he stared into the distance. W, he shouted, A-S-H-E-D. Man washed. What the hell? Had Mr. Ambrose had taken a bubble bath? A-S-H-O-R-E. My heart made a leap. Man washed ashore. Of course. Oh God, if he had been washed ashore, did that mean he couldn't swim by himself anymore? Did that mean that he couldn't move at all? That he was stiff and cold and... No, please, Lord, let him have escaped. He can't be. He just can't. I was just about to open my mouth again, to demand to know more, when the signaler's next yelled letter hit me in the stomach like a sledgehammer. A. My mouth was open, but no sound came out. L. Oh God, could it be? I. Yes, please, please let it be true. V. Yes, 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 just one more letter and... E. Yes. He's alive. Crossing the distance between myself and the signaler in the fraction of a second, I grabbed him by his lapels and shook him. He's alive. Tell me, where is he? Blast you, tell me where he is. The sister cousin fiancé secretary dog's body. I reached the small village of St. Margaret's at Cliff that same evening, just as the sun was setting. A dinghy set me ashore on the beach, beyond where the cliff ended. Are you sure you don't want us to accompany you up to the village, Miss Linton? The captain asked. He had insisted on coming ashore with me. If the gentleman needs anything, or if you can't find the way, no, thank you. I'll take care of everything myself from here on. Well, if you're sure. Absolutely sure, Captain. If it wasn't really Mr. Ambrose who had been washed ashore, I didn't want the captain there to see me crumble. And if it was him, well, I didn't want anyone around for that meeting. Very well, the captain bowed. Farewell, Miss Linton. You, too, Captain. Captain Crockford barked a few orders, and 2 sailors pushed the dinghy away from the shore. Not long after, it was moving back towards the dark shape of the ship, contrasted sharply against the flames of the sunset. I didn't stay to watch the dinghy disappear. Instead, I turned and started marching up the beach towards the twinkling lights of the village. After only a few paces, I stopped marching and started trudging instead, the sand shifting and scraping under my thin, and still damp, shoes. Dash it all, couldn't that arrogant son of a bachelor manage to be washed ashore on a paved stretch of shore? The night remained silent, unsympathetic to my trials and tribulations. The walking became easier once I was across the beach and on the path up to the village, but by that time my socks were already full of sand. Muttering a few more unladylike expletives, I considered how Mr. Ambrose would react if I were to ask him for 3 days sick leave because of foot soreness. Probably not a very good idea. The village at the end of the path was tiny. It didn't take me long to find the vicarage, and after I knocked, it was only a few moments before the door swung open, and a portly little man with glasses blinked out at me, obviously confused at finding a strange female on his doorstep. Yes, my dear, how can I help you? Are you Vicar Dawson? I asked, although his white collar really made the question rather redundant. Yes, I suppose so. Most of my parishioners seem to think so, at least. Good evening, Vicar. I made the best curtsy I could manage in a damp dress and sand-filled socks. Judging from the vicar's expression, my efforts didn't exactly come up to scratch. You found a man on the beach earlier today, I believe. Yes, indeed, Miss, Linton, Lily Linton. Yes indeed, Miss Linton. The poor soul was half drowned and unconscious, clutching a piece of wreckage as if it were the railing of Noah's Ark itself. I stepped forward, eagerly. Did he wake up? Did he tell you his name? Why? The vicar asked, with obvious curiosity. Do you know him? I can't very well say until I know what his name is, can I? Oh, of course, how silly of me. Well, did he tell you who he was? The vicar shook his balding head with regret. I'm afraid he did not wake up while in my charge, miss, and since he's not in my house now, I can't say whether he might have woken up by now. Not in your house. I live alone, miss, and I'm more used to taking care of souls than earthly bodies. So I gave the unfortunate man into the care of Mrs. Fotheringay, a kind lady living just above the cliffs, at the edge of the village. She has a room where she takes in lodgers during summertime, and with true Christian charity she agreed to put the unfortunate gentleman up for a few days. Where exactly does this Mrs. Fotheringay live? You know him, then? The man who was washed ashore? Yes, at least I hope so. Oh God, please let it be him. Tell me, where can I find this Mrs. Fotheringay? Stepping out of his door, the vicar pointed down the village. Just go down the main street until you come to the big oak. Turn right and carry on until you see a red brick house with pretty green shutters. That's Mrs. Fotheringay's house. He gave me a kind smile. I hope your, friend is all right. Thank you, Vicar, thank you so much. I had already started running down the street, when I screeched for a halt. Blast, quickly, I turned around again. I had nearly forgotten to ask the most important question. Vicar, that room that he's in, will he have to pay for it? The vicar blinked at me, taken aback. I don't think so, no. Thank God. A wide grin spread over my face. That means he really will be all right. If it's him, that is. Not wasting another second, I went tearing down the street. Not even the sand in my socks could hold me back now. The house was there, just as the vicar had described it, red brick and abominably pretty green shutters. It also had an ornate brass door knocker, which I grabbed and smashed against the wood hard enough to crack the paint. After a while, hesitant footsteps approached from the other side, and the door opened a crack. Yes. Mrs. Fotheringay. But hearing that it was a woman outside, and not a mad axe murderer, the person on the other side widened the crack slightly. Yes, who is this? My name is Lily Linton. The vicar gave me directions to your house. I'm here about the man you've taken in. The castaway. I couldn't help grinning at hearing the term applied to Mr. Ambrose. It made me think of some fellow in a Robinson Crusoe get-up, with a huge beard, a jacket made from goatskin and an old-fashioned rifle over his shoulder. Just thinking of Mr. Ambrose in that outfit made me want to burst into giggles. But then I remembered that it might not be Mr. Ambrose I was about to see, and my urge to giggle ceased abruptly. Yes, the castaway. Please, Mrs. Fotheringay. I know it is late, but will you let me in? I was on the ship that went down, and have been searching for a man who was with me for 5 days now, and... My desperate pleas trailed off as the door swung open the rest of the way. In the doorway stood a crinkly little lady with the kindest smile I had seen since nearly drowning. Atop her brown hair, shot with grey, sat a homely-looking brown bonnet, and her shabby beige dress looked to me like the garment of an elderly angel who had retired to a nice cloud in the country. Oh, my poor dear, come in, please. I was grasped by both hands and pulled inside. You were on the ship when that dreadful accident happened. If it was an accident. But I didn't say that out loud. Instead I just nodded. Oh, dear Lord, come into the sitting room and have a cup of tea, my dear. We'll find you a nice place by the fire. You were shivering, perhaps later, thank you. Your guest, the man. Of course, what was I thinking? Squeezing my hand again, the old lady tugged me down the hall. I'll take you to him right now, dear. Letting myself be pulled down the hallway, I gathered enough courage to ask the question I really didn't want to ask. Mrs. Fotheringay, what did he give as his name? Please, Lord, let it be him. Let it be him. Mrs. Fotheringay gave a good-natured snort. He hasn't told us his name. In fact, the gentleman hasn't deigned to speak so much as 2 words strung together. When I asked who he was, he looked at me as if it were an insult that I didn't recognize him at first sight. Well, that definitely sounds like the one I'm looking for, I muttered, hastening my steps. Please, let it be him. Please, what does he look like? Well, entirely too cool and collected for a man who had seaweed in his hair not half a day ago. He's tall, and dark, and tall, even when he's lying down, if that makes sense. Handsome. I suppose you could call him handsome, if you do not mind that cold glow following you around the room. Thank God. My lips twitched upwards without meaning to. I don't think I'd mind. Opening the door at the end of the hallway, Mrs. Fotheringay led the way into the sitting room, where to my surprise a girl, about my age, sat in an armchair. She was doing her needlework, and it took me only one glance to see that the work was perfect, and there wasn't a single bloody puncture wound in her fingers. I disliked her immediately. Miss Linton, may I introduce my daughter, Violet? Mrs. Fotheringay gestured to the girl with a smile. Violet, my dear, this is Miss Linton. She was on that ship that went under, and thinks she might know our guest. If she does, she's going to take him away with her. The girl's hands twitched, and her eyes flashed to my face. Oh, apparently, my dislike was reciprocated fervently. I curtsied. Slowly, Miss Violet Fotheringay rose from her seat to return my curtsy, making it quite obvious she took pleasure in the fact that hers was about 10 times as graceful as mine. So pleased to make your acquaintance, Miss Linton, she lied. As am I lied right back at her. Violet has been nursing our guest, Mrs. Fotheringay supplied cheerily, blissfully unaware of the lightning bolts cracking through the air in her sitting room. Nursing him, so that was it. I bored my gaze into the girl, trying to drill my way through her brain. Keep your hands on your needlework, where they belong, missy. So, young Miss Fotheringay's eyes slid over me from head to toe, obviously not impressed by what she found. You want to take him away with you, do you? Yes, and I will. She gave a condescending smile. Of course, forgive me, I'm sure my mother mentioned it and I just didn't catch it, but what is your connection to him, exactly? Her eyes drilled into me as mine had into her. Even Mrs. Fotheringay looked at me with interest. My connection with Mr. Rickard Ambrose. In the fraction of a second, myriad images flashed past my inner eye. Mr. Ambrose, glowering at me from across his desk. Mr. Ambrose, threatening me. Mr. Ambrose beside me, fighting, ducking gunshots in the dark. God, what could I say to explain my presence here? That I was his dog's body, his secretary. It was true, but I'd be damned if I let her look down on me. Mr. Ambrose glowering at me again, his eyes glinting with cold danger. Mr. Ambrose rushing towards me. Just for a moment, I considered telling them that I was his sister, but the moment the idea entered my brain, my mind, body and soul mutinied and kicked me in the metaphorical backside. No. But why not? Why wouldn't I use a perfect explanation for being here? Mr. Ambrose's lips crushing mine while he pulled me against him. I pulled a face. Probably that was why not. Blast that man. Why did he have to do that? What if I told her I was his fiancé? But I wasn't, and I didn't want to be, did I? Bloody hell, I was a proud feminist and a suffragette. I wasn't supposed to want or need any man, least of all a bloody chauvinist like him. I'm his cousin. The words came out of my mouth before I knew what I was saying. A cousin, a relation close enough that it wouldn't be strange for us to have been travelling together, and distant enough to still make me competition for Miss Fotheringay. 2. The flash of hostility in her eyes told me she understood perfectly. Oh, his cousin. Her eyes swept once more over my rather short figure, my brown, shoulder-length hair and equally brown eyes. Her lips twitched in a sarcastic smile. Of course, the family resemblance is so startling. I should have noticed it before. What do you mean, Violet? Mrs. Fotheringay asked, confused, not noticing how I was trying to murder her daughter with my gaze. She looks nothing like the gentleman. Apparently, the daughter had not inherited the penchant for sarcasm from her mother. Her father must have been a nasty piece of work. He gets his looks from the other side of the family, I told them both, not taking my eyes off the younger woman. Now, if you would be so kind as to take me to him. Mrs. Fotheringay opened her mouth, but her daughter was faster. Of course, I'll take you. She smiled at me, her teeth gleaming like razor blades. I'm sure he will be glad to see me. He has grown quite fond of me over the last few days. I was the only one who was really there for him, you know. If I strangle her now, would that count as murder? Surely, English law would make an exception in a case like this. Probably not. After all, the law had been written by men, and they hardly ever were reasonable. Lead the way, I told her, returning her smile. She led me down a corridor towards a room at the back of the house. Outside, I could hear the whisper of the wind and surge of the sea. We had to be close to the cliff's edge, here. Wait here, will you? She told me with another smile. I'll go in first. Maybe he doesn't want to see you. He hasn't had long to recuperate, and it might not be good for him, seeing a strange face like that. Strange face. Who does this witch think she is? If anyone is the stranger here, it is she. I opened my mouth, but before I could say a word she had already slipped into the room, leaving the door open just a fraction. Peering inside, I could barely see the end of a bed in which someone was lying. Part of me wanted to fling that door open, but another part shied away from it. What if it wasn't him in there? What if it was some total stranger? Hello, darling. Miss Fotheringay leaned over the bed with a broad smile on her face. How are we this evening? Do we feel a little better? The only answer to this was silence. Icy silence. Promising, very promising indeed. Have we drunk the hot tea I made for you? I'm sure it would be good for us. Her smile widened even more. And have we kept the hot water bottle on our feet? Hot water bottle or no, the silence on the other side of the door dropped another few dozen degrees in temperature. The smile on Miss Fotheringay's face flickered slightly, but she did her best to keep it intact. Well, listen, there is this young woman here to see us. I mean, to see you. There's no need to, of course. I can send her away and make you another cup of tea, and you won't have to worry about. Her voice broke off in the middle of her sentence. All right, maybe I should let her in. 2 seconds later, she came marching out, her lips pressed tightly together. He wants to see you, she informed me. Huffing, she stalked off down the corridor. I, for my part, reached for the doorknob. Please, I sent one last, desperate prayer upwards. Blimey, I hadn't prayed this much in years. Please, let it be him. Pushing open the door, I stepped inside. Sweet reunion on the rocks. The room was small and homely, a single window looking out over the cliffs, a gently flickering lamp on the bedside table, pictures of sailing ships on the wall and a 4-poster bed with velvet hangings that had seen better days. But I didn't really take in any of that. I didn't even see the beautiful view of the cliffs and the sunset over the see-through window. Because in the bed, clothed in the tattered remnants of his black tailcoat, and with a bandage around his right leg, lay Mr. Rickard Ambrose. He was not looking at me, but staring the other way, at the flowered wallpaper. This gave me a prime opportunity to study his profile to my heart's content. It was just as I remembered it, rock hard, immovable and with power etched into every inch. Whoever you are, he said to the wall, get on with what you've come here for and get out. I have no patience for time wasters. I know, sir. My voice was nothing but a whisper still, his head whipped around the moment I spoke. His facial expression didn't change when he saw me, but there was the slightest widening of his eyes. It's you. Yes, sir. Silence sank over the room. Mr. Ambrose's dark, sea-colored eyes bored into mine, but his lips didn't move. Blast you, why can't you say anything? You had no problem yelling at me on the ship, during the storm. You didn't even have a problem with kissing me, for heaven's sake. It's really you. Yes, sir. Silence, more bloody silence. Why can't you say something, damn you? And I mean more than just, it's you. You can, I know you can. Remember last time we spoke, last time you held me, last time your lips touched mine. Remember that, why don't you say anything about that? I thought you were dead, he told me. My breath caught. The words themselves were as cold and curt as any you could think of, but the tone. Had I really heard a motion there? Surely not.